What will make you a successful civil engineering leader? Being adaptive. In today's episode of the Civil Engineering CEO, I have with me Josh Fowler. Josh is a licensed professional engineer, president of Davis Floyd. In this episode, Josh talks about how being adaptive and having a diverse background can help you to be a successful civil engineering leader, and he throws in a couple of great lessons and stories along the way. Let's jump right in. All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show today. Josh Fowler is the president of Davis Floyd. Josh is a licensed professional engineer. Josh, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, we're excited to have you. And maybe you could start off, Josh, by just introducing us to Davis Floyd. Tell us a little bit about the company, your location, your size, and kind of the services that you offer.
Yeah, so Davis Floyd, been around for almost 70 years now. We're a second-generation family-run business. We are headquartered in Greenwood, South Carolina, but we have 5 other offices throughout the state of South Carolina. Approximately 150 people currently, and we offer a diverse array of services, primarily centered around civil engineering, but we do some other things as well, such as landscape architecture, land surveying, and we actually have an environmental compliance group as well. Our core areas are community development, and that could be anything from an industrial facility to a multi-use commercial development to residential. We also do a lot of transportation work. That's roads, bridges, et cetera, anything associated with transportation. And then another core area of ours is water resources, which is my passion, being a wastewater engineer. But, we do everything from water, drinking water, stormwater, wastewater. If it has to do with water, we can do it.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about your background. A lot of civil engineers that I know aspire to kind of be leaders in their firms, presidents, executives, which is where you sit today. Talk a little bit about your journey in your career and how it took you to a leadership position like where you're at today.
Yeah, so, I consider my career to be very diverse, and I think that's really benefited me over the years. I started out in construction, so that gave me a really good platform and foundation for the design process and how things go together out in the field. And I think that really helped me, from a design standpoint as I got, transitioned over into a consulting role. And so I have primarily been in consulting role for the bulk of my career, mostly in water and wastewater, but also a little bit of, traditional civil site development and on the industrial side in particular. And I did take a detour in my career. I went out and did sales and marketing and business operations for a large multinational manufacturer, which was, pretty cool at the time. And I learned a lot in that particular role that I've been able to apply back, in my consulting career. And again, all that put together, I think the diversity and the people I've met along the way and folks that I've learned from have really done great things for my career and gotten me to where I am today.
That's great. I do think diversity is so important in one's career. And similar to you, I started out as doing surveying and I was on construction sites. And that really helped me when I got into the office to design as a civil engineer, like really understanding how things went together in the field. I thought it was like invaluable experience. And so I definitely think that these different things that you can endeavor and try in your career can help you. And like you said, getting into sales and, I'm sure that helps you more interact with people better, right? Something that
absolutely
isn't necessarily in the engineering curriculum, so to speak.
But, yeah, they don't teach that in school.
No, they don't.
They should.
They should. I'm definitely a proponent of that, but I think that's great. I think also having leaders in your firm that have diverse backgrounds is also very beneficial because you know the value of having people try different things and having people, develop different skill sets. So you can kind of set that course for people within the organization, which I think is important if you want to develop well-rounded professionals in your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I've always tried to do over the years is just, build complementary teams. I don't want to have a team where everybody's the same because I think you're just really missing out on a lot of, creative opportunities and opportunities for, ultimate success, by having complementary teams. I've always found that to be very successful. So that's always what I've tried to do.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, just from us having a couple of conversations and talking with some people there, I know you have built up some really good interpersonal and leadership skills. But how would you describe kind of your management style, like your overarching management style, and how, and how it influences your team's performance?
If I had to sum it up in one word, I would say adaptive. And the reason I say that is because, I look at every individual as a different person, right? Because we're all different. And so applying a one-size-fits-all approach to, leadership and management just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so over the years, I've really tried to, just be adaptive and be flexible, especially, the longer I've in my career, these newer generations of individuals are coming on board. And so I've got to be able to work with, several generations. And again, people with varying backgrounds as well. So it's been, I think that's really where my time out as sales and marketing, made a big impact, because, dealing with those individuals and finding those connection points is really, that's the core of, management and leadership when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I think that's great. In fact, we were doing a project management kind of training session for one of our clients earlier this week, and we got into this discussion a little bit during the session. And the one analogy that I used during the session, which you just reminded me of, when you said adaptive, is like even in sports. Like I like to use a lot of sports analogies. I'm a big sports fan, but if you have a football coach who comes in with a certain philosophy or scheme and they're married to it, regardless of the talents of the skill sets of their players, usually that's not a good situation. It doesn't end well. But if you have a coach who says, I have this scheme, but I have players that are better doing other things, so I need to make some adjustments to kind of fit my players,
Right.
I think that kind of speaks exactly to what you said around being adaptive, right? You have different people on your team that have different capabilities, and all of a sudden, if one person leaves your team and another person joins, it doesn't mean you can necessarily do things the same as you were doing it before.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key right there, is you just got to work with what you got. You try to, draw out the strengths from each individual, which ultimately will lead to, overall success. And of course, everybody has weaknesses, and so you want to try to, help teammates with that as well. But yeah, I just really try to empower, my team members to maximize, what they're capable of doing.
So Josh, let's talk a little bit about technology. We know that technology is changing every day. It's reshaping the landscape of civil engineering. How does Davis and Floyd, or go back to being adaptive, how do you adapt or, keep up to date and keep an eye on technology and these changes that are happening so fast?
Well, as you know, Anthony, with engineers, we're always trying to find a, better way to build a mousetrap, right? And technology is always a key part of that. Going back to the days where we transitioned from, drawing on a board to AutoCAD, that was something that was embraced and, built upon as the years go by. And so we always are looking for new ways to leverage technologies that are, it's going to serve our clients better, and it's also going to help our team to be more effective and efficient in what they're trying to do. It could be anything from, new surveying equipment such as GPS systems or drones, 3D scanners, et cetera. Again, we just try to stay on the forefront of, however we can be, more efficient and do a better job for our clients.
Josh, what was the size of your firm, you said, roughly?
Yeah, we are 150 people spread across 6 offices.
About 150 people.
Yeah.
So how does a firm the size of 150 people monitor these things, right? Like, is someone looking at technologies? Like, how does that work for you even? How do you even wrap your head around it? I'm curious.
Well, I guess there's a variety of different mechanisms for embracing and learning about new technologies. Some of it is from the manufacturers themselves. A lot of these companies do a very good job of, evolving their platforms or their equipment and then coming and teaching us about them. So I guess from a sales perspective, they do a nice job with that. But at the end of the day, we try to, not be on the bleeding edge, if you will, of this technology, but we do like to be on the leading edge. And so a lot of times we'll, partner up with another firm or a contractor or some other stakeholder partner of ours and test some stuff out together so that, it's low risk, but yet we can still kick the tires, if you will, on some of this new technology.
That's great. I like that approach a lot, kind of share the risk a little bit. You have to try some different things. That's great. So, just looking at the landscape of the industry today, the economy, the world, based on where you sit, you see a lot of civil engineering professionals within your firm, other firms, projects you're working on. What would you say are some of kind of the key traits or skill sets that you think civil engineering professionals need to have today to be successful in this landscape?
Yeah, well, I definitely say that the so-called soft skills are the differentiator for, not just civil engineering, but I think the engineering profession. That's things like, emotional intelligence, communication skills, relationship building, talked about that earlier. Presentation, public speaking skills, all those are very, very necessary. So my approach has always been I could have the best design in the world or the best idea in the world, but if I can't properly communicate it, then it's a lost cause and I'm wasting my time. So I think those are the key skills that are differentiators in our industry.
Yeah. Those soft skills that I always say are so hard for technical professionals to build.
Yeah, they are indeed.
Which is, yeah. No, I think you're right, though. I think the ability to interact with other people is so important in what we do in the consulting world, in the engineering world, and because it may be other professionals, but it may be citizens in the community when you're presenting a project, right? Or like
Yes.
a planning board or an agency that you got to present something to. And so, I tell engineers all the time, outside of, getting your license, one of the most important things you can do is develop your ability to speak, your speaking skills. I know sometimes we don't equate like engineering and speaking together, so to speak, but you have to. I mean, I remember I was doing a presentation at a college a couple of years back on like careers for engineers and the engineering students. And the one engineer said, I went into engineering because I don't like writing or speaking. And I was like, you might want to make a change.
Yes.
Because you're going to have to do a lot of writing and a lot of speaking. So I don't know. I definitely agree with you that those softer skills are, really important when it comes to, engineering.
And another
projects.
one too that I think is a differentiator, and I've kind of been thinking about this probably for the last decade or more, but just self-awareness and personal growth, as an engineer or really in any field is very, very important. And to go along with that, just identifying how can I be better at diversifying myself? Because going back to the point of relationships with others, the way you build those is through connection points. And so if you're, not a quote unquote diverse person from a, what you like or what you do standpoint, then you're going to have a harder time making those connection points and building those relationships that are so important.
Yeah. And I think that really goes back to what you said earlier about like adaptives, right?
Yes.
Like you have to always be willing to change yourself, if you're going to expect other people to do that around you, your team members, right? Because they're going to be looking at you as an example. And I think that if they see a leader in their firm that has had a diverse background, is willing to adapt and try different things, then they're probably going to be more open to doing that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I try to model that. I mean, I always say that complacency is an organization killer. And so, I try to model that myself and trying to get better each and every day. And, one of the sayings I heard early on in my career was, we reserve the right to get smarter every day. And so I try to apply that,
right.
And model that for others.
Yeah, I think that's a good message for like leaders in the industry is that, your team members are watching you, right?
Yep.
It's like parents with their kids, like, that's how you learn stuff from watching what they do. So if you bring someone to a meeting with you, they're going to watch how you interact with your client and how you present things. And they're going to, learn from that. I think that's one of the great things about being a leader is you have that ability to mentor people, guide people. And a lot of times you can just do it by the way you act.
That's probably my favorite part of the job too, Anthony, if you want to know the truth, just, coaching others and empowering them to be their, best version of themselves.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of prioritization and productivity. I mean, you're president of the company, but, you're an engineer at heart. You're an engineer by nature, which means at one point in time, you were doing all those calculations, you were doing those reports, you were going to sites. And now, I'm guessing you don't do that so much anymore. So talk to me a little bit about how you show up to work now and how you kind of prioritize your days and think about, what do I really need to focus on today when I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that could pull you in different directions?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it always has been because, most of us at our hearts, we're pleasers. And so we want to, do for others and try to, check off the boxes, if you will, if people ask you to do, certain things. But as you said, as a leader, you have to prioritize. And so I really try to, each day come in here and say, okay, what's important today rather than what is urgent today. And so, if you look at it from an importance versus urgency standpoint, that really helps me try to filter out, some of the things that may not be as important, but, certainly urgent. And I got a great team that helps me with that too. I mean, I've got a group that, tries to keep me on the right path and, they help me figure out what's the most important thing that we got to take care of in a given day. And it's a lot of fun, working through some of that. Not so fun in some cases, but, We have a lot of fun doing it. I've got a great team indeed.
Yeah, that's great. And the reason I asked that question is I think this goes for anybody, but I think the higher up levels of an organization that you get to, it's like what you decide to work on has such a big impact, right, on the success really at that point of the organization, yep. Right? Like, and I think that sometimes when you start your career as an engineer doing technical work and you end up at an executive level, like both of those positions are extremely important. But if an engineer makes a mistake, their manager can help them and find it and do quality control on it. If the president makes the wrong decision or spends a day doing something when they could have done something else, obviously the consequences of that can be a lot greater.
Absolutely. And I guess to prepare myself for that, it helped early on that I would, did a lot of water and wastewater work. So if you think about a, drinking water system, that impacts an entire community. And if me making decisions from an engineering standpoint, if I don't get it right, people could get sick. And so I guess that kind of, hardened me to, not worry so much about it, but just do my job and do it the right way and focus on the technical side of it. And, things will just work out if you do the right thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let me go there for a minute in terms of, water. You're someone that's navigated both the public and private market segments when it comes to the water business. Right. What are some of the unique kind of challenges and opportunities in that sector right now based on, your time as the South Carolina Water Business Group program director?
Yes. So I think the water industry, I think I can boil it down into 3 words, time, talent, and funding. When I say time, I'm talking about how far behind we are on critical infrastructure projects. If you look at some of the, ASCE, grades that they give infrastructure throughout the United States, we don't do a very good job there. Okay, so that's the time part of it. The talent part of it is I don't think we've done a good job at all from a workforce development standpoint compared to some of the other industries that are out there. Take, for example, the manufacturing industry. I think they've done a really good job, particularly here in the Southeast, of really, developing workforce. And I think from the water standpoint, we just haven't. And so we've got a long way to go as people start to retire and we're losing talent, not only to retirement, but also to firms like ours or people just leaving the industry altogether. And I think we got hit really hard after the last recession. A lot of folks that may have gone into engineering and water specifically, they didn't go into it anymore because the jobs just weren't there back at that time. And they've gone into other types of, technical fields. So that's a big issue is workforce development. And then as far as the funding goes, we have started to make some strides from a funding standpoint for water infrastructure, but we still have a long, long way to go to catch up.
Yeah, and I would happen to agree with you, and I say this because my wife is a water engineer and civil engineer,
Nice.
So I have a little bit of insight into this industry. And I know there's a lot going on with PFAS, and that's probably a whole nother episode, but, that's that in itself. And when you talk about opportunity that's available for, professionals in water resources, there's a lot to be done there and a lot to be tackled. And I agree with you. I think that we could do a much better job, even within the civil engineering community, of, highlighting water resources as a career path. Because I think that, water, when you look at the future, water is critical, obviously.
Absolutely.
And there are still lots of areas in the world that don't have that clean water. And I think we have challenges, here in the U.S. with the water, like I mentioned before. So it's certainly, I think, kind of an exciting area of civil engineering for those that have a passion for that and might be interested in that. I just hope that we can do a better job of kind of highlighting some of those opportunities that are available because they're there. But, I think we have to make people aware of them, essentially.
Yeah, people are always going to need to turn their taps on, get, clean water out. They're always going to need to flush the toilet. So it's a stable career. It's not going anywhere. It's recession proof. And again, it's a great industry to be in, and we just got to do a better job of educating folks about it.
So the last question that I have for you, Josh, is around leadership. How do you envision the role of leadership evolving in the civil engineering industry as time goes on here with all the things going on in the world today?
Well, you absolutely have to evolve. The leaders that don't evolve, they're going to end up out of a job because you have to evolve yourself. You have to evolve your companies in order to keep up with the times, the technologies, societal changes, et cetera. Going back to the water, one of the things that we've heard a lot about over the last, decade or more is, climate change and rising, sea levels in coastal areas. And so we're realizing that. issue now from a company standpoint. We do a lot of work with coastal communities, but if we didn't start to look ahead and adapt to what was taking place, then we wouldn't have been prepared for it as a company. And so again, the leadership within any organization must adapt to the times in order to properly lead the organization through whatever's going on at the time. And I don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now, but I've got to be ready to shift. I've got to be ready to pivot and evolve if we're going to keep this company growing and having a great place to work.
Yeah, and I think with the technology, I don't know if we know what's going to happen 20 months from now.
That's
like
fair.
Things are changing so fast. It's like but I think that kind of goes back to kind of really a theme of our time together today, which is that ability to adapt, right? I think that was the answer to one of your first questions, and it's like the answer to your last question, right? And some of them in between. So I think that maybe a big takeaway from our time together here is if you're listening and you're a civil engineer, you're a leader in the industry, you're aspiring to be a leader, adapting to change is going to be something that is critical. We tell this all the time to people when we do project management training, is the only constant on your projects is going to be change, right? And, you have to learn how to deal with that. And, it's something that happens at the project level. It's something that happens at the personnel level, something that leaders have to deal with every day. And the more adaptive you can be, the more successful you'll be, the more successful I think your firm will be overall.
And it's funny because people hate change, and I think engineers in particular hate change more than anybody else. But you absolutely have to embrace it and deal with it and evolve yourself in order to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, Josh Fowler, president of Davis Floyd, licensed professional engineer. Josh, thanks for spending some time with us here on the Civil Engineering CEO.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It was a lot of fun.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Josh. Bright guy, sharp guy. That diverse background really helped him, and his ability to be adaptive was certainly a theme throughout our conversation, and I hope it can inspire you to be an adaptive and successful leader in your career. Please consider subscribing to our channel here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.